A very warm welcome to all the viewers of the CSR Universe Leaders Talk segment. This is our opportunity to hear and learn from the thought leaders in the development sector of India and beyond. Today, we'll be talking about WASH issues in India. So WASH, as we all know, stands for water, sanitation, and hygiene. The significance of these aspects in overall public health is paramount. Access to clean and safe drinking water, having functional toilets, and the means to practice hygienic living are fundamental needs for a healthy life. To enrich our understanding of these issues, we have with us Mr. Bishwadeep Ghose, the Country Director for Water for People in India. Mr. Ghose has been managing national and international programs related to water security, agriculture, and forestry for well over 25 years now. He has contributed to water policies and the designing of large-scale programs, both for the central and the state government in India. He has served as the interim director of HEVOS's regional office and is the founding director of the India Foundation for Humanistic Development. So, Mr. Ghose, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to a thought-provoking discussion with you.
Thank you, Shweta.
We'll begin with the first question. So first of all, what I'd like to know from you is what are the most critical WASH issues that our country faces today? And although there would be a plethora of issues, do you feel that some of those problems are more urgent and they need to be prioritized over the others?
Yeah, so if I may start, so WASH, as we know, it comprises of water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's a bit of an artificial construct, but if we look at these separately, I mean, water has its own issues, so is sanitation and hygiene, all contributing to or impacting health. That is what unifies them all, I guess. So if we come to water first, so in terms of the issues, I mean, in a very layman's language, there can be 3 or 4 critical problems related to water, right? So first, we say quantity, either the quantity is more, which is a flood-like situation, or quantity is less, which is a drought-like situation. So somewhere there is more water, there is less water, and we are working in both different type of scenarios. So that is the first problem that we see related to quantity. The other, of course, is quality. I mean, you have water to drink, but it's not safe to drink. So what do you do about that? And safety can arise because of bacteriological contamination or due to chemical contamination. That can be both anthropogenic or geogenic, like arsenic and fluoride are geogenic problems. Coliform is a bacteriological problems when sewage water gets mixed with drinking water, etc. The third type is the access, which that water is there, but it's not close to where I need it. So we have to walk far to fetch water, especially women and children. They have to walk inordinately far distances to fetch water, which is not shouldn't be acceptable in today's day and times, at least in urban areas where we almost take these things as granted. And imagine a woman in Northeast or in the Himalayan states having to walk 2 kilometers downhill to fetch water. And we've recorded that they spend almost 8 hours a day going up and down just to get water for drinking to home, both children and women. So the challenge is like, how do you ensure you create access closer to where they live, or so that the time that they spend on getting water can be used for other productive uses or for recreational purposes. Right. So these 3, and in addition to that, I mean, you may have right quantity, right quality, safe water to drink close to home, but you don't get it 12 months a year. Or in a day that when the amount that you need is not there. So that is sustainability. I mean, so it's not good enough to have water for 8 months a year or within a month, only for a few days in a week. Unless you have a continuous supply of water, it is not sustainable. And possibly for us in the world of development, equity or inclusion is also very important, because water also tends to get very political. Depends on who owns the land, who owns the well, determines the access. So typically, people of lower caste or lower caste gender have traditionally had their access denied. So if we can tick all the boxes, we call it's a water secure village or a water secure
Okay.
panchayat or district. So that's our definition that we work with for simplicity. Sounds simple, but to work on it, of course,
No, because
becomes very
these
difficult.
are very different issues that you just discussed. In fact, you were talking about access, and I came across the campaign that Water for People has come up with, the water runway one. And I think it really struck a chord with people who take water for granted. So I'm sure it will definitely help in bringing the kind of awareness that we need to have. So,
Absolutely. I think that film was, I mean, we liked it a lot. Uh,
yes,
as opposed to other development films that get made, this was contrasted with the different kinds of work that women have to take. For the
yes,
fashion, of course, it's by choice and it's much more
absolutely.
glamorous as opposed to the kind of work our women have to take. Having said that, I think the access part through the huge investments brought in by the Jal Jeevan Mission and the central
Right.
government and the state governments put together, that focuses squarely on eliminating the need for having women to walk long distances. So aspirationally, that is a very good goal to have. I mean, if we people in urban areas can have water in our houses, in our taps, why can't the same be there for in rural areas? So that's a great goal to have. But our work on the ground, I mean, when we try to do that, we see it's not as simple as it sounds. And wherever it's getting done, also, there are additional kind of problems that are emerging that need to be
Mhm.
addressed on an immediate basis.
So, what is the approach that Water for People takes when it starts work in an area, and what kind of strategy how does it formulate its strategy and projects, and what kind of approach do you take?
Right. So, I mean, for any local impact work, which is what we call, I'll come to our strategy little bit later, but this is how
Okay.
we the process part. Let me answer it first. So
Yes.
typically, I mean, we have very limited resources, right? We are not a very big organization, but our goals, ambitions are big. But in terms of size of the organization, it is relatively modest. So we can't work everywhere. We know that. So therefore, the areas that we choose becomes important, and we try to be intentional about choosing the most vulnerable areas, most vulnerable communities within those areas who are facing biggest share of the problem related to water
Yes.
or sanitation or hygiene. So once that is there, the next step is to see if the community is interested. Is there a demand from the community? Because we feel we believe on in the agency of the communities to solve their own problems,
Yes.
right? So we government are only enablers. So we follow a very community-centric approach where we feel decentralized management of both water and sanitation solutions are more sustainable and tenable, and they're more equitous as well. But for that, the community has to take ownership, and from our side, we do a awareness campaign or a mobilization of the communities, identify leaders from them, create water user committees where their role and what we will do and what the government will do is made clear. So that right from the inception, the community centricity is centered from the very beginning, right? So, and then of course, we do the planning for the infrastructure work or the management work, uh, the implementation, everything is done with the community. There is a contribution that we seek as a mark of that community ownership as well. So they can contribute in cash or in kind for the projects that we do. And right up to the operations and maintenance stage, when we do the handover and we withdraw, because we don't intend to stay in a place for a long time, because it's ultimately based on the local community having put in the infrastructure, having brought in the skills and the knowledge to run to manage their own systems. So this is broadly the process. So we have a impact model that we call everyone forever, which literally means like leaving nobody behind, right? So it's not enough for us that only some people in a community have access to clean services or good services. Everybody should have it, no matter how difficult it is to reach them. And the forever part, as it means, it's not a one-time effort. Whatever services, whatever infrastructure gets built, that should last for a long time. It should not break down after we leave or after the project is over. And there is certain effort that goes into making that happen.
In fact, I was going through your website and I really like this everyone forever. And I saw that you mentioned, the website mentions that you work for years in a community. When you start work, it's not for months or 1 or 2 years. It's a consistent work over a long period of time. So I think that's the kind of approach that an issue like water requires, because it can't be done overnight. There's one more thing, water being an extremely local issue. Uh, do you come across certain indigenous models or indigenous knowledge that you have been able to build on and that has helped in creating solutions for that particular community? Has that happened?
Yeah, I think you've picked a very important question actually. So yes, of course. So initially you asked about among all the problems of water, what are the most pressing ones? Sorry, I didn't answer that. I'll answer that and relate what you are asking
Yes,
with the
please.
first question itself. So among all the problems, and as per government records, there are 600 million people in India that are vulnerable to either quantity, quality, or access issues, right? That's the government record, which is a conservative. Now, um, but Jal Jeevan Mission, having recognized that, for the first time, I think it's a historic opportunity where so much focus, so much investment is coming into water. Before water, it was on sanitation, which is all very good. But the first problem there, which is very immediate, that so much of money, taxpayers' money, government's money is going into creating this infrastructure. How can we ensure that the infrastructures are maintained? Same way in our projects also, which is a concern for forever, ensuring forever. For government, the scale is humongous, right? So that part, I think collectively, including water for people in our area, we are trying to work very closely with the government to figure out community-based mechanisms of ensuring operations and maintenance of the infrastructure that is created, for which you need service providers. They have to be trained, they have to be incentivized, etc. And that is one line of work that needs to happen. The second one, I mean, the traditional knowledge one, and why decentralized management or community ownership becomes important, is that groundwater, on which most of the drinking water systems are dependent, is a common pool resource. That is groundwater, it is invisible under the ground, so you can't quantify it, right? You can't see how much is there and therefore how much you allocate for drinking, how much you allocate for agriculture, it's invisible. So there's an invisible competition going on between the multiple users, right? So common pool resource, the amount that you draw for agriculture, let's say, which is around 75 to 80% of the total groundwater storage or usage, if you take more for agriculture, it will leave less for drinking, because it's a common pool. So therefore, and because the contexts are so different for groundwater, in Karnataka, it will be different. The rocks are different where groundwater is stored, will be different in Bihar, which is alluvial. Mountains, it's a different kind of aquifer system. So a centralized system, one size fit all, will not work. That's what I was trying to say. And that is where the decentralized community knowledge becomes very important. And in our own work, what we call a water resource management approach, we try to demystify the science of groundwater, because we need to follow modern science, but we need to make it so easy for the end user to consume that they can use that to manage the water resources in a in a manner that is required. And that is where the traditional knowledge comes into play, because India traditionally has been a groundwater civilization. So that knowledge rests with our communities. It's just how do you surface that knowledge and make it linked to what we are doing now in a contemporary way of managing groundwater. That is the effort. That is where the focus of our training goes in. So they have their local languages for understanding rocks, understanding the behavior of water. So ultimately, the exercise culminates into making a water budget. Um, and based on how much rainfall you have, you will get to know how much water can be stored in a particular season. And because you are the same farmers, you know how much water you need for agriculture, how much water you need for drinking. And then you can see, like in a bank statement, do you have surplus or deficit? And if there is deficit, there are certain protocols to be followed that comes from their own side, because they understand their own environment, their own natural resource much better than we do. Only that connect needs to be made. The agency has to be built to make that choice. So that is
Right.
one aspect of traditional knowledge. The other, if I may add, is on behavior change. We've been experimenting with an approach called social art for behavior change. It is pioneered by a partner called Wonder of Foundation.
Okay.
Where the idea is two-pronged. So, for behavior change, normally we identify the behavior triggers that are needed for, let's say, a person to use a toilet. You build a toilet, but it's of no use if people are not
They don't
using it,
use it.
right? So
Right.
that's one of the common problems that we've seen in sanitation. Or in water, that once you put pipes and taps, they leave it open and there is no focus on conserving water. What if it runs dry? Or in hygiene, with the time of COVID, we saw that hand washing becomes a very critical um, behavior aspect to do. But the challenge is, how do you take it to vast swathes of community in different parts of the country and nudge behavior change at scale? So in social art for behavior change, what we tried to do was, we, instead of parachuting, professionals from the cities or urban areas to do plays, to do research, or to run campaigns, we would identify local artists, folk artists, often of dying art forms, because they know their local communities much better than we do from the outside. They can communicate in a language that is easily understood by them. They understand the cultural modes. Only the behavior triggers we integrate into their messaging. So the form is theirs. So the knowledge in terms of how to connect it to the mythology that is relatable by a community in a certain location. So that becomes a much more powerful medium than, let's say, if we do street plays or campaigns by professionals from outside. And not to say those are not good,
Right.
but in terms of serving the other purpose of revitalizing these local art forms, creating a pathway
Mm-hmm.
for enhancing their own livelihoods, right? And it's very low cost. You're not getting anybody from outside transporting in. So that's much more sustainable, that's much more enjoyable, and it serves the dual purpose of revitalizing the local art form as well as changing behaviors in wash. So these are two examples, but as a principle, we try to identify the traditional knowledge books that exists in every community and try to build on that instead of trying to plant something from the outside.
Yes. Uh, you do the kind of work that you would be coming across challenges on a daily basis. So I'm not going to ask about the challenges, but are there any learnings, crystallized form of learnings that you would like to share with other professionals and domain experts who are working in the field of water?
Maybe I can hazard because experts don't like to be told in other areas. I'm not an expert myself, but we generate learnings from our work, and yes, we should
Yes.
learn from other such experiences where things are working, and certainly we should share our own, just so that we can cut down the learning cycle. So that's what we believe in. And few of the learnings that we see coming out from our work, I mean, first and foremost is the community ownership part.
Right.
So don't try to take shortcut. Like you said, water management, sustainable water security is a long-term process.
Absolutely.
So if we try to take shortcuts, we'll put some infrastructure, create some shiny objects, leave. It may last for 2 years, 3 years, then it breaks down. Quick fixes don't work, so we have to stay there, and we have to carry the community who are the local managers. We are not the managers or government at a district level. All of us have role to play, but we have to identify who are the core stakeholders, which is the community in question, because what water is a common pool, it has to be managed locally. Decentralization is the way to go. That is the first and foremost message that would like to convey. The other from our experience is there is a need to look at water holistically. So this artificial siloization for drinking, for agriculture, for bathing, in nature, everything is interconnected, right? So right now, let's say after the success of Swachh Bharat mission and Jal Jeevan mission, there is a problem of wastewater. Now, wastewater is a term. Is it really waste, or can it be an input for some other productive use? Can we reuse that water, recycle that water? Which we are doing, by the way, in our work, trying to see the grey water if it can be used for kitchen gardens and agriculture after a little bit of treatment. So if we see it in isolation, then these seem to be in a very different parts. But if we see at a system level, these are all interconnected. So rainfall is the only source, and then what we learn in school in the water cycle, that is managing the water cycle is what needs to be done. So that includes all water, surface water, groundwater, wastewater, grey water. Look at it in totality for any unit of change, plan taking everything into account and embed it in local institutions. The third, and I will end here in terms of there are many learnings, but what we see is that while making policy or while, let's say, we discover a solution that, hey, this solution can work, change the lives of people in the rural areas. What we often overlook is we have the solution, but who will do it on the ground? Who will take it to the communities? And this we realize that the investment in the human resource, in skills and people, it is like an inverted pyramid. So from national to state to district, by the time you reach the village, there are no people. So who do we expect? I mean, in our projects, we through the project we can pay, train people, but that's not scalable, and we are not going to be there endlessly. So like we have in urban areas where water and sanitation are seen as professionalized services, if we have a problem with the tap in our house, we just call a number and plumber surfaces. That analogy is not there in the rural areas. So who are the service providers in the rural areas? Otherwise, it will be ad hoc. Jal Jeevan mission will come, will train some people, mission gets over, they will disappear into oblivion. Same thing happened with Swachh Bharat mission. So I think the need of the hour is if we want to sustain these services, if we want them to being run professionally, then we need dedicated cadre of people, of men and women, who can be trained, who need to be incentivized, and who need to be accountable to certain institutions locally, just like we have in the urban areas. And that has been our learnings as well, because in our own work, we've created this Jal Bandhus and Nirmal Bandhus, local youth, underprivileged. There's an incentive for them. We train them, we give them kits, we link them to the local panchayat. So if there is any breakdown of any hand pump or any toilet, they know who to go to, right? So they don't have to, if there is no one, then very often the hand pump is lying in disrepair.
Remains like that, yes.
Remains like that. There is no way to fix it. So that service provider cadre is very important, both in our work, anybody else's work, or in the work that the government is doing. So this is what we are trying to advocate for as well.
Yeah, that was such a key insight, because we often focus on the projects, on the interventions, and we have a very input-driven approach. But what happens after that? So I think that only comes from experience, and it was an important point. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, because you personally have worked in this domain for 25 years. So, is there any particular region or state that comes in mind that has done particularly well in the wash segment, or has solved water issues? It's a personal opinion question that I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think so both. I mean, both in terms. I mean, we of course work in West Bengal, Bihar, Maharashtra,
Yes.
bit of Assam and Orissa. But in this 25 years, of course, I've had the opportunity to look at what is happening in other states as well.
Yes.
And different states for different things. For example, currently, if you see Jal Jeevan Mission, Bihar is the front runner with
Okay.
98% coverage. So normally we don't associate Bihar. I mean, I'm sorry, getting into a stereotype, but that's the
No, it's
imagery we
understandable.
carry of Bihar. So we tried to understand, is this a myth or a reality? And we see that Bihar has done something very good, which other states haven't, which is to focus on the institutions called, which is below the village level. It's called Ward Implementation and Management Committee. So they
Okay.
have decentralized within the Panchayati Raj system, which is a constitutional body, and empowered them to implement the Nal Jal scheme and to take care of it, and which has resulted in, because unless you have people who have to work on the ground, things will not move fast, and that is what we are seeing in some of the other states. The other example that I can quote where things in the mountains, the source of water is through springs,
Mm-hmm.
and springs dry up. Uh, you don't have any other sources for drinking. Women have to start walking further and further to get water. So there, across the Himalayan states of Uttarakhand, Himachal, possibly Northeast, they have come up with a concept called spring shed management for rejuvenation of springs. So the spring source now gets linked to the tap connection at home, which is the Jal Jeevan Mission link. So in some sense, the water resource management that we are talking about in all our other pieces of work, which are not in the mountain areas, uh, was done much earlier in the Himalayan states. And there, because water is such a precious commodity or precious resource for the people, that there's a large demand, there's a large traction from the community for restoration of springs. And the traditional knowledge that we are talking about is very, very living. They have their nalas and dharas. They immediately connect with that and they know the importance of that. And when a program like this comes, they take part in a wholesome way. So this and possibly Gujarat, which has also reporting 100% coverage. But if you see the history of Gujarat, there has been a wave of citizen engagement programs.
Mm-hmm.
They have Pani Samitis in place, which again rely on this decentralized management systems, traditional knowledge. So once that acts as the infrastructure, any community institution that is in place, any new program comes, you can use that infrastructure. That's like the highway. If you build the highway in the beginning through the community, then you can roll out Swachh Bharat Mission, Jal Jeevan Mission, Atal Bhujal. You don't have to create every time a new program comes, who are the service providers, who are the institutions, all from scratch. So I think these are some of the things that contributes to success. Possibly there are others, but this community ownership piece,
Right.
identifying your service providers and institutions ab initio and strengthening them, and of course, giving them the agency, giving them the mandate or to manage their own resources. Any program, these three ingredients, if it is there, I think it contributes to relatively higher degrees of success.
Yeah, I think it holds for other sectors also, not just water, but any development program. It needs community ownership and involvement. But I wanted to ask about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, I mean, and Jal Jeevan Mission. We obviously know that these programs are a success. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But you have seen the remotest parts of the country, particularly in Bihar and West Bengal, which are, say, flood-prone areas, and their problems are very different. So, how far have these programs been able to make a change at the ground level in the actually remote areas? The last mile delivery, is it there in your personal opinion?
Yeah, so that's again a very important question that often gets overlooked. The tail end, whether in
Yes,
agriculture or drinking, it's the same issue.
absolutely.
So, if you are asking about the remote, then if I can talk about a project that we are doing in Maharashtra, not in Bihar
Mm-hmm.
and Bengal, because
Yeah.
that is in a block called Chikaldhara in
Okay.
Amravati district. It's very remote, tribal population, Kurku tribes. It's in the Melghat region. They are displaced because of the tiger reserve, and it's like uprooting. You give them the same amount of land in a other place, but it's not the same as where they have been uprooted from, where they have a culture, social. So they are very, very impoverished, very, very vulnerable. And of course, when we went and we identified 50 of the most poorest and the most vulnerable villages, and this was supported by one of the CSR initiatives of Colgate Palmolive for 6 years. And I think that has, I mean, our collective conscience, unless you go there, you will not understand the remoteness and the vulnerability that you're talking about, of communities that have been displaced twice, live among at the fringes of forests in the Melghat region, and not having drinking water access, especially in the lean months before the rain comes. 2, 3 months, there is no water. So from the government side, the Jal Jeevan Mission, they have put in the infrastructure. We have created around piped water systems this before the Jal Jeevan Mission came in, to ensure that those who are likely to get missed out, we start with them first,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and when we went in, they said, we are the first people from outside, including the taluka office, to have come into their village. They have never seen any other official before. So that is the kind of remoteness I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very humbling there to see now, I mean, the smile on the women's faces when they open the tap for the first time and see water coming out. I mean, that's all your hard work, all your challenges on a day-to-day basis gets washed away. Um, so that uh, happened because we were very intentional about choosing the communities which we knew is likely to get left out. Um, so we have to plan even for government scheme what we say a first mile approach. So this is last mile thinking. Okay, you bring in water for agriculture or drinking. End में 20% get left out. जैसे कोई ना कोई तो छूट ही जाएगा, वो बाद में हो जाएगा. It doesn't work. So if we plan for the first mile, which is at the end most vulnerable, then the rest of them get covered. If you can reach out to them first, then the
Absolutely.
others will get covered naturally. So that has been a learning there, and we are really grateful to, because to Colgate Palmolive for this long support and flexible support, because that is also becoming very rare in the CSR world these days, because the cycles are getting shorter and you have to show impact in 1 month, and water, natural resource, you just can't do that, right? So that we were able to do it. I think it's a believe in that partnership that worked out in this case, and hopefully we'll get to showcase that and try to expand that work in other similar areas, because we have 50 villages, nothing in the larger scheme of things, right? So how do we scale that approach is the question now.
In fact, that was going to be my last question. You talked about Colgate Palmolive's support, and what I wanted to know, because in the development sector, you are working, you have to have a very conducive relationship with your donors or partners, and also you need to work alongside the public bodies, the government. So, what suggestions or recommendations would you make to businesses and even the local bodies, so that a very fruitful, a productive partnership can be formed, or if it's there, how can it be elevated?
Yeah, so as a part of the new country strategy that we have drawn up, so it is called Destination 2030. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, the feeling within the sector, and this globally, is that while we have been doing good work, the pace at which we are working and the way we are working is not going to take us to achieving the SDG 6 goals. So there's a call for action to accelerate as well as amplify the work, for which you can't do it alone, you need to collaborate. So
Mm-hmm.
that becomes the starting point of our country strategy as well. So we have a very simple two-prong country strategy where first is for anything that solutions are not known, any innovative work that we do at a local level, deep engagement level, we generate the learning and the knowledge. Once the solution is known, we try to scale through the government, because government at the end of the day is the biggest customer for scale.
Mm-hmm.
They are seeking help also. They realize that for this to work, community has to get involved, which is not typically their core strength, where the CSO role lies. So while government brings in the investment for infrastructure, the CSO can bring in the community interface with the scheme. And the CSO work needs to be supported both for innovations, generating innovations, and for scaling, which becomes the role of the CSRs. So this historically, I mean, it's almost a generation, 30 years now that I've spent. There's a mistrust between these three: government, private sector, and the NGOs. So nobody trusts each other for good reasons or bad, but that is what it is. But we have to break that if we have to make it work. Without the partnership between these three pillars of state markets and civil society, it is not going to we're not going to achieve at least the SDG 6 by 2030. We can keep chipping away at the corners, 20 village, 30 village like that, create these islands of successes. It will never have going to scale. So we have got into a MOU with state governments in Bihar, in West Bengal and Maharashtra, where they have requested for our support. We say, fine, we have the knowledge through the work that we have done in the past 15 years. We convert that into training modules, but you give us, because we won't have boots on the grounds in the areas that we are not working. So you identify the service providers from within the system. We will train them. We will leave the knowledge in your training institutes so that it can go on a continuous basis.
Mm-hmm.
And we bring in all the support on data, on technology for monitoring, for capacity building, for creating visibility. So that is what we are doing now and will be doing for the next till 2030 actually. So where we are aiming to reach 100 million people by 2030 from 5 million where we are now currently. So that's a huge leap, and that we hope to achieve with the partnership with the government as well as the CSRs.
Okay. Of course, I mean, any kind of scalability won't be possible without partnering with the government. So I'm glad that you are working in the positive direction with the government, state governments, and I wish you all the best for the work you're doing. I mean, it's such an important aspect of development, of well-being. So I hope you're able to achieve your goals. And that would be our interaction for today. And I'm really thankful that we have covered so much ground in half an hour. Usually, we're not able to do that. The interactions usually tend to tilt in a certain way. But thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and insights. And thank you for giving your time.
Oh, thanks,
Thanks a
Shweta. It
lot.
was always a pleasure. I mean, I forgot to mention one thing
Yes.
from the solution side in this mix that is needed, which is your role, the media's role. We ignore that. And as NGOs, that is not our skills as well. But I think the role that you guys play is also absolutely critical. So it helps us to know what others are doing, and it helps us to disseminate what we are doing. And both, like we said in the beginning, it's equally very important. Mainstream media, I think, is lost interest in anything rural, which is a bit
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate, but that's the reality that we see. But any effort from any kind of media that shines a light on the work that is happening on the ground that needs to be scaled up can only be applauded. So thanks again. Thanks a lot.
It's actually such a privilege for us to do what we're doing, to listen to people like you, to learn, and to be able to play our part. So thank you. Thanks, and thank you. Hope to collaborate with you in the future as well. Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Shweta.